One day I was out on the golf course with Dallas. We were just having a good time, meeting people, talking with people, and up came a former Major League Baseball player with a young man who was built like a Greek god. And the former Major League Baseball player, grabs him, brings him over to me, and he says, "This person right here, this young man right here, could be the greatest baseball player who has ever lived. But he needs your help. He has some stuff going on inside his head. He needs to figure it out. He needs your help." So I just said, "Okay, come on over here, step into my office." And we walked a few feet away, and I asked him, "What can I do to help you? Well, what are your goals? What would you like?" And he says, "I do want to be the greatest Major League Baseball player who has ever lived." I said, "Okay. Remember, performance equals potential minus interference." So I said, "What's in the way? What is in the way of you becoming the greatest Major League Baseball player who ever lived?" And he said, "I can't play catch." I thought, that's harsh, right? So I said, "What's going on?" He says, "I can throw the ball from the outfield 100 miles an hour. I can throw it from the center field fence to home plate 100 miles an hour. But I can't play catch in front of people with somebody who's 80 feet away, 100 feet away. I bounce it. I'm afraid I'm going to throw it over their head. I just have the yips when it comes to just playing catch." So I'll never forget that conversation. And I really wanted to help that young man as much as I could. And so today, what we've started to do is to build a video series that will help not only that young man, but a lot of other young athletes, people in business, people in the military, whatever it might be, with situational yips, situational stresses, situational worries. You're in a certain situation and there's a problem. So we're doing this video series to help you with that. So come with me into my office, and we're going to start this video series today. Thanks for joining us. In this video series, we want to talk about anxiety. We want to talk about not necessarily clinical anxiety, but the kind of anxiety that limits us in our performance. We're going to have two different categories of anxiety: situational or state anxiety, and all the time. It happens all the time. It happens anytime. We can't predict when it's going to happen. That kind of clinical anxiety or trait anxiety. We're going to put that off till a later time. But at this series right now will be 12, 13, 14 videos. This series we're going to look at the kind of performance anxiety that impacts us as athletes, businessmen, test takers, students, whatever it might be. It's a state-based performance kind of anxiety that limits our performance, and we're going to learn what it is, how to overcome it. So we want to talk about all these things that are up here on the board today. Now, over here in the red, this is the clinical kinds of anxiety disorders. Generalized anxiety disorder, that means, you have this sort of, it's generalized. It's like it happens anytime, it can happen anywhere. You have this feeling of anxiety. Panic disorder, which is brutal. If you know somebody who has that, you know how difficult of a situation that is, because panic disorder is just painful, it's brutal. Social phobias, agoraphobia, other phobias. I knew somebody who once was terrified of the idea that reaching their hand into a mailbox, there'd be a spider in there, and they couldn't get the mail. It's phobia, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of people with this, especially people from the military, first responders, whatever it might be. We've treated this a lot with our direct neurofeedback over the years, post-traumatic stress disorder, and then obsessive compulsive disorder. So these are clinical situations that we're going to leave for another video and other time. Let me just say, social phobia, I have seen people who just never grew out of the whole stranger danger place in their life, where from 2 years old on, the brain is supposed to mature and we're supposed to just get over it and interact socially. And I have worked with someone who was 20 years old, never outgrew it. that part of the brain just never matured. And so we helped the brain to make those changes, and she's getting married here really soon, graduated college, did really well. So social phobias are really interesting to work with, very painful if you are the person, but they can certainly be overcome and fixed. We're going to deal with those later. This is what we're going to look at in this video series. This is our performance kind of anxiety. Nervousness, the yips, stressed, worry, or fear are the categories that I just put in there. There may certainly be other categories, but those are the ones that struck me the most. Nervousness, you get it. Yips, now that's something that athletes will talk about more than businessmen or somebody else, but we'll explore that in just a second here. What are the yips? And we'll be talking about how to overcome things like that through this series. Being stressed, we're all pretty familiar with that, and it comes a lot. We're interacting, all of these things here is about us interacting with our environment and the meaning that we put on that interaction with the environment. So you have a game in front of 50,000 people. What meaning do you put on that? You have a big business presentation that's going to either make a big sale or your competitor is going to get the sale, whatever it might be. You have an event that's coming up, some interaction with the world around you, and you put meaning on it that may create some of these things. So being stressed comes from, you get a letter from the IRS, you get a phone call from family, you have a situation that's not working out. Just simply put, I suggest you ask yourself the question, can I handle this or not? If the answer is yes, it will cut your stress by way more than half. But if the answer is no, keep watching this video series. We're going to help you out with that. Worry then comes from that, and fear. And these are both physiological responses that come from that. So along this chain, here's the chain of things that happen. We have negative thoughts that can creep in and doubts. And when we have negative thoughts and doubts, that leads to indecision and hyperfrontality. This is the opposite of the flow state that as athletes or business executives, students, test takers, whomever, we want to get in that flow state where we're challenging ourselves a little bit, but our brain is just working. Think of the downhill skier who is just flowing, going downhill at 70 miles an hour. That we want our brains to be working like that, and that requires what we call hypofrontality. We kind of turn off the front of our brain. We don't have any of this thinking. We're not coaching ourselves at that moment. We're not thinking about the future. We're not thinking about the past. We're not thinking about how cool it would be if we made this putt and won the tournament. We're not thinking about that stuff. So we get these negative thoughts, doubts about our ability to perform, which leads to indecision, and we start having a lot of talk in the front part of our head. The coach is talking, our parents are talking, our spouse is talking, we're talking, and we don't perform well. This is very limiting in our performance. And when you are in a position where, say as an athlete or a fighter pilot or whomever that might be, where you have to be able to identify what's going on, make a decision really fast and execute on that decision, this loses. Because the doubts lead to indecision, you take too long to figure it out, and by then the other guy's made the decision and he wins and you lose. So we want to get rid of this. This whole spectrum here also will cause a rapid heartbeat or even a stronger heartbeat. This is where you start to feel your heart is beating out of your chest. It's a physiological response to these thoughts in your mind. Rapid heartbeat, trembling hands and legs, a little bit of adrenaline and cortisol gets released in your body. It's coursing through your blood, and you have felt that. A little trembling in your hands and your legs. Sweating is pretty common. Nausea, because the blood is not digesting food or whatever it might be. It's draining out of your head. It's getting into places for that fight or flight event that might have to take place. Dizziness. Chest pain is not uncommon. Headaches, weakness, again limiting, especially if you're a professional athlete. Muscle tension, and the feeling that you're choking. Where does that phrase come from? Because people feel it, feel like they're choking. So these are the things that happen from these situational kinds of stresses that we can experience. And we want to learn how to overcome them, how to deal with them, how to live with them, how to be successful even though that they happen to us. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to look at these things. We're going to look at ways exactly to overcome them. First, what is it that causes them? And the more we understand what causes them, then we know how to put the brakes on them and how to live free of them. We want to get into that flow state where we are remarkably productive, where we perform at our very, very best. And these things, they all limit us from doing that. They sort of jam up the front part of our brain that lets us make decisions, execute plans, be really, really good in the boardroom, be really, really good in that presentation, good on that test, good on the field. They're very limiting. We want to get rid of them. So that's what this video series is about. Again, it's about 12, 13, 14 videos long. Watch them all. They're going to be really helpful to you. I'm Dr. Doug. For Calm Waves, we're the Brain Guys.